Sagarataran Karana he Ravi Nandana Bandana Kandana he Sharanagata Kinkara Beta Mane Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane Riddhi Kandara Tamasa Bhashkara he Tumi Vishnu Prajapati Shankara he Para Brahma Parat Para Veda Bane Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane Manubharana Shashana Ankusha he Naratrana Tare Hari Chakshusha he Gunagana Parayana Deva Gane Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane Kula Kundalini Guma Banjaka he Riddhi Granti Vidarana Karaka he Mama Manasha Chanchala Ratra Dine Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane
The powerful spiritual force at the base of the spine awakens at thy touch, and the bondage of desire disappears when you grant detachment and discrimination. But my mind remains restless despite these supreme blessings. O Teacher Divine, kindly shower compassion upon thy humble devotee.
Welcome back to the second half of the first class on the teaching of the sixth chakra, or Ajna Chakra. 1 in the center, 3 below, 3 above, so it's the penultimate chakra. Sometimes they don't even call the 7th center a chakra. It's just a wide open space of pure conscious awareness, open blue sky, that kind of idea. So the last center that you may be able to distinguish any sort of separation from yourself and the Absolute is at that 7th chakra, that I'm 6 chakras, that has 2 petals. They say, interpret that as souls, great souls coming out of that and going back into it at a very high level. of nadi, and there's just 2 nadis there. Thousands down here, fewer and fewer as you go inward, sometimes referred to as petals, until the 1,000-petaled lotus at the Sahasrara just blows away all the rules, and you enter into non-dual awareness, have that experience of I and my Father are one, or you become that. Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. So chakra 6 is penultimate to that, and we are running our own kind of boat race, and we're doing it at the level of the Pravartika and the Sadhaka and the Siddha, which we're about to come to, that I'm mating these off with the 7 chakra system, which I'll show you more next week about, if we have time this week, so that you're reminded of a visual of how this works, these inner spiritual vortexes that are back in consciousness, and that the body is just a sort of outer representative of. Because you have 2 eyes in the center, and we'll get to that, and then you have 1 eye, and then you have causal senses, I mean, that see ultimately out of a single eye. So in this case, we've looked at Pravartika and Sadhaka, the difference being mainly in that teaching that the outer practice is more important to the beginner, which is rightfully so. And they just hopefully won't get stuck there, and they will begin to intensify and go inward. And like they may read a scripture here, but they may actually go study it with a guru here. It would be, they may practice a physical asana here, but then they'll start practicing mental asanas here. That is, take up stations of mind that, they'll sit in one physical posture and their mind will take different stances on a dualistic, qualified, non-dualistic, and even non-dualistic level. So the mind, the nadis are opening up to facilitate much more capaciousness and expansion of awareness, expansion of human awareness. The mind breaking down its borders. So there are some great roads, nadis, channels that lead towards that. And they're less traveled, would be a nice way of saying, or like mountainous passes, roads that go along cliffs, and you won't see very many souls traveling, populating them, because there's a teaching Lord Buddha actually used too. There from that high mountain pass, I can look down on the valleys and see beings involved in their various nefarious activities. And but from up here, it just seems so all unreal, like seeing Calcutta from the Octoloni Monument. Sri Ramakrishna said everything just becomes very small and almost useless. It doesn't mean anything. You're so far above it. So the running towards Brahman and going away from the world doesn't happen until a person begins to get an inkling that there is something more than matter. And quite often that's a dangerous time when you hear about occult powers and so forth. There's the 6 powers of God, but there's the 8 occult powers, and we make a definite distinction between them in teachings in the Gita by Sri Krishna and in the Gospel of Ramakrishna by the Great Master, so that we know that some of these powers are, you might say, under the auspice of Kundalini Shakti, the Divine Mother, the Great Mother, and others are under still the influence of prana and ancestors. Sri Ramakrishna called it the tricks of prana, and you don't want to get attracted to them. They're like crow droppings by the side of the road. The rain cloud of virtues is what you want, to use the father of yoga's teaching. First he sees the occult powers within him, and then he passes by them and instead sees the rain cloud of virtues and goes towards that. You might have remembered that from just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when we had that teaching up on a chart for mantra practice as one of the 21 steps of mantra practice in the, I think it was the Pashanti phase, where you got over, or no, the Madhyama phase, where you got over the occult powers and got attracted to inner qualities that you shine with, They're not this false gold, fool's gold they call it, but the real gold of your consciousness you became aware of that. So these first two we've looked at in these two boxes. I remember you could even kind of sing about it, how the person who's into spiritual awakening might think about that. Jatone hridaye ko adarini shamamake Jatone hridaye ko adarini shamamake Mantui dak arami deki Mantui dak arami deki Arjano ke unahi deke Jatone hridaye ko adarini shamamake. So, blissful mind, he sings to himself, awaken to the enchanting vision of Mother Shama. That's Kundalini Ma, that's Kali Ma. By opening your inner eye of wisdom. So there it is right in the song. Not just in a teaching, which I'll show you soon, in 7 different religions, but they're putting this inner eye in a song, in accord with levels of consciousness that you attain, that you begin to use this inner sight. It becomes yours, whereas it once veiled. Too many cobwebs over it, or too many lifetimes ancestor worship. So he goes on to say, upon perceiving her form enshrined within your heart, so now they're talking about Anahata Chakra, above your ancestors, deeper, withdrawn to that sacred chamber of ecstatic love and behold her there in secret. Now abide in that exalted condition. And remember that the ordinary mind, back in the 3 lower chakras, connected to the 5 senses, cannot enter there. Cannot enter there. So the further you go towards Brahman, the further away you go from the world of the senses. And it's blissful to do that. Sort of like a good meditation. You're not really, having a good meditation, you're not really worried about the work you have to do, or where the kids are, or, having to make dinner. You just naturally go into an exalted state for the time that you have that condition. So you should be opening to that all the time. So worshiping her in solitude, O mind, and with your self-knowledge intact, let Kamalakanta forever rejoice in the Mother's sacred presence. Kamalakanta was another great Bengali songwriter, spiritual songwriter, bhajan, like Ram Prasad, that we sometimes quote from, that Sri Ramakrishna loved very much, those songs of Ram Prasad and Kamalakanta, and used them as teaching tools to help reveal the Dharma, which is a path I've followed in my life too. So that would be something you might want to sing as you're approaching the stage of a siddha. It's a tough measure from here, you see, especially for the Westerner who hasn't been taught the Dharma over many lifetimes, or by parents in this particular age and upbringing. Even morality maybe got the go-by in some of the modern churches, or was given only just lip service, is a good word for that. But in India you got yoga. You be nonviolent. You be truthful. You do not covet the goods of other beings, including other countries. And these hard and fast rules, you practice moderation of your senses, which would be right there later. 5 senses of mind attain a stable position if you practice that earlier, which is the second yama of yoga, ashteya. Or I'm sorry, the fourth. We're talking about brahmacharya now. So that kind of moderation, and so all of these were in India Hopefully they still are in some quarters, but they were part and parcel of your upbringing and your vows as a young person. So I'm saying that in context to how you would approach a harsher and harsher measure to this, and it would hold you in good stead to have accomplished these earlier stages. Avastas. So Sri Ramakrishna, one of the things that doesn't get said about him, I mean, he's a paragon of universal harmony, believing in the truth of all religions. He's an avatar that of Divine Mother Kali. He resurrects the Dharma for this age. I mean, you can go on with these beautiful, great statements about the great master, all of them true, but one thing that doesn't get said very much is that his teaching technique was to teach by stages. And he wouldn't force a person into a next stage. He'd take them from this level to this level, or from this level to this level. You'd hardly know you were passing through stages, but he would be there, whether you were a Brahmin priest or a young man or woman, he would be there with the next level of qualification that you needed to attain in order to prepare you for the next avasta. He taught by avasta stages, and that's one of the beautiful things about a divine incarnation. It can do that. It can even take suffering people and prepare them to see through the illusion of suffering. Take people who believe so desperately in their karma and teach them that their karma is a mere nothing, if they'll only blast your karma, as Vivekananda told Hindus in his daytime. Oh, Swami, I'd like to be like you, but I have all my karmas. So they're thinking third chakra, they're thinking ancestors, they're thinking I'm never going to get free, they're thinking post-mortem emancipation. And Vivekananda would just look at him and said, blast your karma, see, right now, here. I mean, if you can't do it with a perfected man standing in front of you, and you're not recognizing that you're in a situation where he could help you do that, not just merely by his example, but even by his powers, his prowess, then you're way behind the 8 ball. There was a beautiful story I was reading the other day where a man was just standing at the Bellarmat at one of the ghats where the boats come up. And he's looking up and down the river waiting for his ferry. See, this is back in the 1800s and late 1800s. And so all of a sudden he looks up the river and there's this boat with this big piece of orange in it coming his way. Ochre, is he? Oh, one of the Swamis is coming. It was not only one of the Swamis, he was standing there in time to receive Swami Vivekananda come off that boat, whose eyes were in the air looking, like a mother bird hatching her eggs. And we saw the devotee whom he was familiar with. He said, come on, let's take the boat further upriver and we'll talk. So, wow, what a great boon to be standing there and have this great Swami, the great Swami of this age, come in a boat right to you, decide to take you up the river and talk to you about your spiritual life for an hour, you see. So you just realize what happened to you? So, in that vein then, these avastas, these stages are paying off as you pay into them. It's sort of like banking. A beautiful song in India, Ram Prasad sings about keeping accounts, spiritually speaking. You've exceeded the expenditures, with your expenditures, the income that you've gotten spiritually. So you start putting all the banking thing in terms of a ruined spiritual life because you've spent too much of your spiritual energy on worldly things, you see. So in that way then, you need to accrue more of this spiritual merit. And you're doing that probably in spades, to use the expression, as you become not just a sadhaka, which is a beautiful thing, but a siddha, a perfected soul. there's Siddha of the Siddha, the perfect of the perfect, which is one of the beautiful facets of this teaching. But let's see here then so that we can at least get by this chart today and get into another, the third stage. Adjusts practice based upon the vision of God. Not waiting anymore to have a vision of God, it's having the vision of God. Keeps discipline handy, but lives in realization. That's very important, because there's still some rough edges that need to be worn away. If not in you, in the world, in the family. Shankara is good for teaching that. Sublimates desires and rises to higher states. Transmits wisdom of the scriptures to others. You see here, I studied it on my own because I heard about it. Then I studied it with the guru. Then it got transmitted to me, and I could transmit it to others. You see what a beautiful thing that is, stepwise, avasta-wise, with the revealed scriptures, which is something that is hard to find in the West, revealed scriptures. There are scriptures with some truths in them, but there's really an admixture of sand and sugar in them. So you have to be the ant. And in India, it's easy to be the ant. So, wow, look at all the non-dualism in that scripture. In fact, I can't find any dualism in it. Ashtavakra Samhita, Avadutta Gita, Adhyatma Ramayana. These are all revealed scriptures. So, transmits wisdom of the scriptures to others. A siddha can do that. And meditates in a state of one-pointed awareness. Now, that's really getting us toward this wisdom eye. It could actually segue right there, because I would say if we're putting it across the board, this being the siddha has had experiences of an open third eye. The Ajna Chakra is accessible. Back here, the heart chakra was accessible, you see, and maybe the throat chakra came in somewhere where the transmission was happening. So running a boat race between the two isn't just a curious story that Sri Ramakrishna talks about, or having some fun about how he can shift levels. It's really wherever consciousness centers above the three lower worlds, that's good, you see. And you should be flexible enough to assume that position and hold it. Abide in it, you see. That's what it says, abide in it. I'm not leaving the center right now. This is what's happening with me. I'm not leaving this boat because my devotee just showed up at the dock, and I'm going to take him up the river and stay here, you see, in this particular position, and transmit teachings to him, because that's what Mother's calling me to do right now, because I'm a free wandering soul. And free wandering soul means fully spontaneous to anything that happens, not rigid, flexible. There's a good duality to meditate on. Rigidity and flexibility. Finally, meditates in a state of one-pointed awareness then. So, that's the siddha. Let's just move on, because the descriptions get finer, but they're not impossible to understand. You can comprehend them. Anyone can. The English is there. You just have to open up channels and nadis for these words and spend some time with them. So the siddha of the siddha, the fourth stage of the, beyond the pravartika where we started off, the fourth class of the devotee, that being abides in the non-dual state of Brahman, and has transformed spirituality, has transformed spiritual practice into bliss. That's like the avatut kind of level of things. When he said, I first started out doing my practice as a sadhaka because I thought I was supposed to. Later on, it became my whole life. Sadhaka transformed into nectar and bliss. And I didn't want to do anything else but practice. First, it was a discipline I had to do. What happened? I'm doing it all the time now, and I love it. It's my life. So something transformed and changed in this stage between the sadhaka and the siddha that culminated in siddha of the siddha. It's just a very natural state, the nectar of naturalness, Non-duality is there. So that being is also desireless and lives for the good of others. Like Swamiji coming on the boat. Maybe he had somewhere to go at Bellarmont. They were expecting him. Put it all off just for his devotee there, because that's what Mother was calling him to do. Let's take a ride up the river. This will be good for you. This is why this is happening. Emanates the essence of enlightenment naturally. It's a nice word. Spontaneous, natural, free-flowing, and meditates naturally with eyes open and closed. And that's a really good segue into this chart, which I have to pass on right now because we still need to make one other association here. That is for others. And that's that the Pravartika, we see have connected it to elements, senses, Antakarana, and Mahat. So, since he has awakened, she has awakened and has these things going on, then he's going to be trying to understand the 5 elements and his senses together, because later on he's going to have to stabilize a position about them. And then the fourfold mind is open to him, where any stage before this, like worldliness, is the fourfold mind isn't even occurring to them. It's just a brain that's occurring to them. And they don't know much about that. They're trying to cut it open with a scalpel, see how it works. Something like that. It's just a noodle of flesh with some little facility for memory. But that memory is coming from the great mind, from the mind through the great mind. So that's Antakarana and Mahat. So you could say that the Pravartika is very much advanced in potential. This is the danger there, is that they get waylaid by the occult powers or lack of perseverance, easy put off, laziness, recurring habit of tamas and rajas. All these things are slowing the way for them, are putting grantis, knots, in the way. And we'll look at that in a big time, probably next week, how many grantis get in the way of opening nadis to the third eye. So then let's connect number 2 now to specifically Mahat and Antakarana. The sadhaka is definitely concentrating more away from senses and objects and elements. Those are figured already. But the mind and the great mind, that's really occupying his or her thoughts. They're at the level of the Siddha. You see, what are they concentrating upon? They've gone beyond the great mind to the Trinity. That formless being out of which the Holy Trinity sprang at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, to quote myself and the Upanishad at the beginning of this class, first thing I said today. So that Trinity, that Holy Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Shall we sing it? Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. That Trinity. So the Siddha is looking towards them. You see, it's great. And of course, Shakti is leading. There's where the Kundalini connection, Shiva and Shakti, are really taking the soul inward towards the Siddha of the Siddha position. Now the Siddha of the Siddha, they're looking at great words, which are representing great principles. Not just Shakti, the Mahashakti. Not just Shiva, Paramashiva. Not just Vishnu, Mahavishnu. And not just Brahma, but Brahman, or Parabrahma. I explained this to a student in an email yesterday. They had a question about the dissolving the mind stream practice, and how when you come to the Trinity and Purusha and all those words, how does that go deeper? So you're talking about some beings that here were higher gods, the highest of all gods inside, the higher powers that you're seeking, that the Siddha will recognize. But how is the Siddha going to get to be perfect to the perfect? By realizing their essence, the essence of these principles, And that's going to take formlessness, and that's going to take these two chakras to help that along, you see. If you're staying here and here, very good. I can transmit teachings, I can talk about Dharma, I can help people in many positive ways, but what's the difference between that kind of being and a soul that understands non-duality, an avatar, or a fully realized being who has non-dual reality right there in his or her very grasp. So that culminates this chart. Basically, if you wanted to culminate it musically, you could put it in a very nice way. Jo kucha hai so tu hai tujhse humne dil ko lagaya ek tujhko apan paya ek tujhko apan paya jo kuch hai so tu hai tujhse humne dil ko lagaya. A beautiful piece by Jafar in the Hindi dialect, where he sings much like this being would sing, like the song of the Avatut. I have finally understood, O Lord, everything exists in thee. Every heart is ultimately united with thee, in thee, nothing exists but thee. Just puts it out there. His highest realization is not philosophically sublime or elevated necessarily. It's very simple and straightforward. Goes on to say, O beloved, your grace has returned me to my eternal abode. So, through the third eye to the Sahasrara, you might say. And your love has permeated my heart back here at the Anahata chakra. Indeed, is there a heart which exists that is devoid of thy love, when nothing exists but thee? He goes on to say about consciousness and everything, from the life heavens, throughout the boundless universe, even into the dark nether regions. Remember those patalas we remembered in the last half? Wherever our souls journey, we find only thee, for nothing exists but thee. So if you're in the lower patalas and you see these demons, that's Brahman coming to you to scare the bejesus right out of you and get yourself out of that predicament which you yourself created. These are your demons. So Vivekananda often used to call himself Shiva's demon. He's coming to get you. It's like the Hound of Heaven teaching, and Hound of Heaven is after you to come and get you. So one of these beautiful, it's called a Causal. It's a very rare form of devotional spiritual song that has that non-dual element impacted in it. It's just like very wonderful and difficult to sing too. Difficult to sing in that it's got a lot of little Karnataka style of singing in it, and it's also might cause you to tear up so you can't sing anymore because it's got such a beautiful message in it. So yes, we will make headway, and we will in this half take up this chart, which is actually a rather quick study, but it does specify, after we've seen how stages move through us, avastas we're calling them there, teaching specifically about the Jnana Chakshu. Now that's Krishna's mention in the Bhagavad Gita. And I love that very much, the eye of wisdom. And you can see I'll get to these other ways in which great seers from different religions, not just in India, but even in other religions, describe this important point here at the center of the forehead. Now I'm saying that, not as your skull or your brain, but as your subtle center that's there, of which, probably put it very nicely there, here, in this quote, if we start off with that. The eyes are in the center of the forehead, but their gaze is always fixed on the three lower centers where eating, drinking, and sex life are enjoyed. So there's our Kundalini master, if we want to call him that, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, talking about the position of the two eyes is at a very elevated place. Why doesn't it just look up and inward to see something higher? Why is it always looking down, you see, into the three lower worlds? Because wherever it looks, that's where it's going to go. So it's going to fall into the samsara loop. And even the two eyes are that noble, to where they should know better than to do that. So there is a teaching where you purify the senses. So sometimes I joke, it's not like Captain Bligh, you take out your eye or whatever and polish it and put it back in, and that's purifying your eyes. But you use the mantra so that everything you speak, everything you hear, everything you touch, and everything you see becomes pure. So it's in the energy, isn't it? It's not in the actual eyeball or eardrum or flap of skin in your mouth called the tongue. See, that's where people go who are attached to gross nadis or gross senses. So this chart is called gross, subtle, and causal sight, and we just made our segue and entrance into it. Let's see what Shankara says about it, because he throws us a very beautiful dichotomy here. He says, the world is nothing but Brahman, but because Brahman is the only reality, that's because Brahman is the only reality. See this always with your spiritual eye, and with an unruffled mind, and in all circumstances. Unruffled mind, we go back to stable mind, that isn't called away by the five elements, the five senses, and enjoyment for objects, that you've transcended and gone beyond transmigration to get away from. You've already done that purification. Give yourself a merit badge about it. Pat yourself on the back, and let's get busy with this adventure of consciousness. But he goes on, for what is there to be seen here by the eye other than the mere objects of the senses? Here means on earth. In like manner, to that one who knows Brahman, what is there to be seen at all, wherever the intellect may play and wonder, except divine reality? And we go back and sing it again. Jo kuchai so. There's nothing here. All that exists is thee. It's all Brahman. So whether you put it in the scripture by a great master like Shankara, who's an Advaitist, or in a song by Jafar in Hindi, you've got that same deep, profound truth teaching. A subtle sensitivity to things inward, which have culminated for them and led to the opening of something like this center, which is a very profound thing. Quite rare, even in the lives of yogis, to have that open. It's not just something that comes, by sitting there and going, if you know what I mean. So basically, it usually comes by grace when you least expect it. You're walking around, all of a sudden, what's that cylinder in my head? That channel that just opened. That's there whether I open my eyes or close my eyes. Does it sound familiar? Meditates naturally with eyes open or closed. It pervades. It cuts through all the worlds as if they were nothing. So it's not a matter of do the worlds exist or do they not exist anymore. It's that there's a hole running through them. That's a teaching in the Upanishads. And it's a teaching in the Mala too. Every bead hole, you see, is non-duality. It runs through every world. We didn't get to that chart 2 weeks ago, the meaning of the Mala, in the Successive Mantra Practice series. I meant to get to that, but we'll take it up in a retreat. But the Guru bead, the hole in it, the tassel, each bead going in, the 54 or 108 beads going through it, the string running through them, and the holes, all have a profound significance, according to the seers and saints. So, he says also here, nicely, wherever the intellect may wander, shall we sing it again? From the life heavens through the boundless universes, even to the darker nether realms, only you exist. This has been my final conclusion. And beyond philosophy and beyond opinions and beyond any other teachings, even Dharma teachings, this is my final conclusion. How did Sri Ramakrishna say that? My final conclusion is that a man comes from the Nitya, comes down to the Leela, and returns to the Nitya. So, he didn't say anything about falling into samsara or maya. That wasn't in the package, you see, for that soul. He didn't want to do that. Lick up the spittle he spat up on the sidewalk 2 minutes ago, as he used to say. So he came from the Nitya, the Absolute. He was one with Brahman. When he took on a body-mind mix, he came down this far and left all these channels in his nadis open to go back through. You see, two nadis and 4 and 6 and 8 and so forth. The whole. So he's leaving these higher channels, as rare as they are, open from the Nitya to the Leela. Leela is sportive play, at play in the fields of the Lord. And so he played there in the heart, you see. But his eyes weren't looking down, you see, on the lower 3 chakras. In Sri Ramakrishna's case, I would say maybe they were occasionally. People would come out of the 3 worlds suffering and he'd help them. So he took on karma for that. Cancer of the throat and that kind of vicarious atonement kind of idea. The avatar is prone and able to do that. So, I would say the defining teaching around that is, oh, you're still in the 3 worlds? Here, come to the heart and I'll talk to you. See? I'm not coming down there to talk to you. Because if you ever tried to help people drowning in the ocean, as I have when I was a surfer, I remember 2 Navy men got swept out in the big waves on Oahu where we surfed, and I had to go out and drag their navy blue asses into the shore, you see. And they were both fighting me the whole way, trying to drag me under with them in their panic. I'm not coming near you until you settle down. Then I'll show you how to navigate these waves, and you'll be safe on shore before you know it. It'll take you about 10 seconds. Get in one of those waves, hold your breath, all of a sudden you're on shore. That's all it's going to take. You have to talk to them, you see. So it's much like that. You see, if you're looking down on the 3 worlds, that's out, of course, from the heart position, and you see someone suffering, you say, come my direction. They have to come into holy company, because the teaching's not going to mean anything to them if they don't. It's going to sound just like the best advice of their ancestors, which is why people didn't follow Jesus for 2,000 years. They're still waiting for him to come back. They should have followed him when he was alive, or when the ship just passed. Sri Ramakrishna said a great avatar like that's a huge ship that comes across the ocean of humanity, and it throws out waves for 100, 200 years. If you don't get on the ship, if you haven't got the wherewithal and the good sense to actually get on the ship and go with Jesus and let the dead bury their dead, then you get on the waves that come afterwards. But those waves are only going to happen for 200 or 300 years after the passing of such a great soul. So the avatar himself can outline the dynamics of this phenomena to you. And so here he's come again. Now, I'll be here in the subtle body. What's the subtle body? Where you have subtle senses, you see. You have subtle eyes to see the worlds from a transcendent position. I'll be here in the subtle body for another 250 years or so, he told Holy Mother, to help those beings who want to come to me. So he's like Atlas, holding up the curtain. So the avatar holds up the curtain of Maya and says, scurry through. My arm's getting tired. You see, 150, 175, 200. Oh. Nobody can hold the curtain of Maya up that long. So here's your chance. So I'm saying in that context then that the avatar has that ability to look from the fourth chakra of blissful love, see, the kind that we were just singing about, and open up channels for people in the lower three chakras. And there is a good teaching we'll look about that. How about the ancestors? There's some of them who are very pious. Because sometimes we diss the ancestors in the tradition. It sounds like we do. But it's also one of the yagyas. You're supposed to worship your ancestors. So that has to go on. You just can't worship them as bodies and personalities, because if you're drowning, they'll take you down with them into that, misery loves company loop. And happiness is a false presumption in the world. So there's no happiness here, and there's no love here. Who said that? Sri Sharda Devi, He Mahamate, the great mother, said that. There's no love here. Happiness and love are just words. Haven't you noticed? Does anyone really care for you? He did. Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda had great parents. They never gave me the love that Sri Ramakrishna gave me, he said. So there's one great soul that has a lookout for you and a gaze upon you. And you have to, if he opens up a channel, well, it's knock and it shall be opened, isn't it? Is it any different with any avatar that comes at any time, in any nation, in any age, with any religion that they're propounding? Why are you being so narrow? Here's your chance to get free. Then you can look back and see what path is the best for you. Like Vivekananda coming up to the boat god out of nowhere. I love that story now. It's like one of my recent favorite stories. There's something orange coming up the river. You see. My God, it's Swamiji. And he actually takes me in hand and we go for a boat race. You see. I was probably somewhere down here thinking about my Hindu ancestors, you see. He came along all of a sudden for an hour up the river. I was like at this center. Well, here then, with that beautiful quote of Shankara, which opened up these transmission teachings for us, let's see about this eye at the center of the forehead and how we already said the eyes there in the physical are looking down to the lower centers. So it's not hard to see how people are pretty much wound up with eating, drinking, and sex life, procreation. And there are different versions of those things. You can eat bad food, you can eat good food. You can eat non-organic, you can eat organic. If you're eating a better food, you're probably at the Prapartika level. And how about drinking? You can drink water, better if it's pure, filtered nowadays. See? Don't let DuPont get a hold of it, like in the 60s, and kill people with cancer because of Teflon. I mean, there are differences here in water, but then you've got other kind of drinking too that's going on. Alcohol, we already said, what's the matter with you? You don't touch the stuff. You don't advise it. You don't drink it. You don't sell it. You know what kind of karma that is? And how bad it is for your spiritual prospects? Outright negative. Drugs, don't get me started. So, these are things that the wise beings, they'll never become a pravartika, even, if you can't transcend those kinds of desires. Your ancestors never got beyond the ancestors because they couldn't transcend those. They owned 100 vineyards across the country that they were in. You damn bet they were selling it. Trading in worldliness. So if you want the pure, you go to the pure. Mud cannot wash mud, Vivekananda said. You can't get to higher roads by unclean methods and means. You cannot. It won't happen. So that's some lower chakra teachings, you see. Let's look over here now, because then you can see how the eye looks a little differently. In the gross senses, it sees and utilizes them, smelling, tasting, seeing, feeling, and hearing. So that's why I just said there are different versions of this to the worldly person and to the practitioner. See, how do you see, how do you hear, how do you taste, and so forth? Is it consciously? Is it mindful? Is it just mindless? See, is it senseless? Is it just for the sake of the taste on your tongue, just for the sake of the senses, or is you're going to use it to help you understand that you don't live by bread alone, that there's an energy in that when you get a hold of and bring it up the spine, can connect with the Mahashakti at this next level. You want to awaken to your pious ancestors? Good. Then make the jump into the heart chakra. Become a lover of divine reality. Then there's the subtle senses. Create across the board there. What are they? They're called odor, flavor, visibility, tangibility, and audibility. So the third eye utilizes both of these sets of fives, is the point here. It also can descend, degrade to using these just for eating, drinking, and sex life. It's the same power of sight that's in it, but you have to understand it begins with visibility. In this particular sense, it's visibility that's the thing that you're going to focus on in your meditation, the power to see. If I don't have the power to see open yet, then I'm going to have to meditate on the power to see. There is a version of that outward. I've been fighting off using glasses for until I'm 70 now. I've still never put a pair on. And when my senses are starting to go, I concentrate and I look deeper and I look harder, and then the rest of the day I can read again. I'm using the energy in my eyes that's still there to keep back the fogginess of my seeing. It's a yogic trick. So I'm still reading fine print in a phone book at 70, if I have good light. And if sure, they'll wear out. It's not the point to prove something to yourself. It's just the point that there's a power in the eye to see that you can get a hold of and use from a higher position, where visibility really means the vision of God. So everything is coming off that. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, I saw Brahman once in the mating of the mating of two dogs. Shiva and Shakti are there. I saw the principle, so his mind is totally above evil or sin or grossity or any of that. He's just looking at the thing as a child would say, wow, that's Shiva and Shakti there doing their thing, you see. And everything here is a combination of Shiva and Shakti, he said. Everything here. Male pigeon, female pigeon, man, woman, God, goddess, avatar, consort. It's all coming out of that one ultimate vision, which is the sixth chakra. So you probably want to put the outer together with the inner there. See how it goes across. Smelling goes with odor, tasting goes with flavor, seeing goes with visibility, feeling goes with tangibility, and hearing goes with audibility. Those are five sets which are different but connected. Nobody thinks that way. Nobody goes around and saying, I'm smelling the earth, you see. That from the standpoint of there's a connection there. They just get to smell and they go with smell. Or they see earth and they go with earth. It's a one sense, one tanmatra kind of life that they're in. The connection's missing. And if you're a pravartika, you make that connection early on with your food, with your sitting posture, with your breath. You're actually beginning to make the connections and participate in the connections and form nadis that will stay open to this kind of thinking, until such a time when non-thinking occurs, when you can get beyond even the mind, which happens after you get beyond the antakarana, if you're a sadhaka. You understand the fourfold mind, done. I did it. I know it. Now, how about the cosmic mind? Let's show me that. Well, that's gross and subtle senses. Let's see. They're indriyas. Karmendriyas, Gyanendriyas, tanmatras, however you want to call them. There's sets of fives there that coordinate with one another, that make up systems as old as Samkhya, all the way up to Shaivism, and Vedanta, Yoga, Buddhism use them. And they know about mindfulness because they've connected these things. They know about sensitivity and nonviolence because they've connected these things. I can't look on earth nonviolently if I don't know about my sense of smell. And the same with water and taste and fire and sight. I need to be able to use these things wisely from a position that's transcendent, like the Ajna Chakra or Jnana Chakshu. So let's just go on, because that needs some distillation and some contemplation in your own mind when you leave class today. You go home, and I'm going to think about this, because you don't just sit and look at food and get nourished, see, or hear about it. Oh, that's really going to taste good. You eat it because then it becomes a part of your system, right? In knowledge, you can't just hear about knowledge and put it in your mind. It's got to sprout roots there. How is it going to sprout roots? By entertaining it for a long time. Have you ever sprouted alfalfa? Does it take 2 minutes? Or do you watch it for a couple of days and water it all the time? Ah, there's the root. So knowledge is that way. It won't stick in you, like snow won't stick on a wet road. If you don't keep it in the mind constantly, that's called contemplation. It's not meditation yet. And you shouldn't be thinking about meditation, or you should be thinking about meditation as your Ishtam, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or Shakti, and working on your Siddha state as you fill in the gaps to your sadhaka state. Not like you get a merit badge for each one of these from your guru as you go along. Okay, you did those 5. See? Well, actually you accomplished 4 of those, but you're working on this now. But, as you do this, this will also come into being for you. It'll mature in you. Just go forward. But where it really gets beautiful in this teaching of these senses is where you get what's called causal senses. It's a bit contradictory, but it's nonetheless very powerful. So the third eye also sees and utilizes the causal senses. The best way we have to describe this is the gross senses happen in waking, the subtle senses happen in dreaming, and the causal senses happening in deep sleep. There is something that sees in deep sleep. You're talking about a witness. You're talking then chakra-wise about the throat and third eye, aren't you? Something that sees. So you really are moving towards the sixth chakra when you come to understand or even hear about causal senses. Because there's something that sees in deep sleep. And you even see in deep sleep, but when you come back to dreaming and waking, it gets covered again. Like that room that you cleaned out while you were there, but then you left and the cobwebs grew over it. So the next time you went back, you couldn't see it. You didn't even know you cleaned it out. So it's going to be another 3 weeks before you have another deep sleep state, or another month or even a year before you have another return to that kind of visionary dream. And you're waiting all the time, what's going on here, doing your practice. You're not paying it forward, you're not getting the intensification that happens to a sadhaka. You've somehow floated back on old laurels. The intensification isn't happening every day. You're not yearning for the vision of God. I want enlightenment at all costs. in this lifetime. So if you talk about causal senses in deep sleep, which is a way that we can connect it, you're talking about even subtler principles like the very idea of solidity, the very idea of liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity, and all pervasiveness. And these are the 5 words I've picked in English for the causal senses. And you would be seeing those when you saw anything from the Mahat deeper. This is how the Mahat operates. We had it in Bijam style 2 weeks ago in the mantra class. The words, the Bijams, are power words that help the Mahat to form worlds. And Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva gave it to the Mahat via Shakti. And, so here's where sound becomes sight, and sight becomes sound. You're going to have to give up your old idea that maybe I get to see God, because no man has ever seen God with these eyes, said John. So even back here at this level, you're going to start to have to give up that idea that I'm going to somehow see God. Well, Jesus is still 500 years off, and Ramakrishna came 150 years ago, and here I am, wasting time amidst decades of life. I'm never going to see God with these eyes, because seeing an avatar is the closest thing you'll get to seeing God with these eyes. So why wait? You go inside and you open your third eye and you see it all as God. That's what he just sang, isn't it? I finally understood, O Lord, everything that exists in thee, and every heart is united with thee. You are all that is. Nothing exists but thee. And so this is where seeing gets good, you see. It's better than good. You're not opening your eyes to do it. And you're not moving about to do it. You're sitting in one place with your eyes closed. Your breathing stops and your thought stops. And that's called Kumbhaka, and that's when you see it. You see it inside yourself as a eminently existing principle that is ever present, see. And so it's a kind of divine sight. There are versions of it in the Gita where Krishna gave Arjuna divine sight. Sri Ramakrishna gave Narayan, the future Vivekananda, divine sight when he first met him in Calcutta when he was just a teenager. Here, I will give you divine sight. I will give you love eyes. Nobody has seen God without love eyes. Nobody has heard God without love ears, is how Sri Ramakrishna said it. This master of Kundalini Yoga. Because he had done that himself with his eyes. And so there are different levels of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. They go with your levels of consciousness. They get expressed through 4 stages, and they manifest as 7 chakras. So India isn't just, here we'll throw yoga there, Samkhya there, another age we'll do Tantra, here we're doing Vedanta, Buddhism came along, thanks very much. So sort of some random play of darshanas, you see, like you're playing with dominoes or something. These are all connected systems which have grown off of each other and fed off each other's wisdom, which has been authentic wisdom, time-tested wisdom, mother wisdom, from time out of mind. It doesn't even have a date. You can't assign a date to it. It's eternal. Sanat. Sanatana. And if you get it, you'll be Sanatanand. You'll be blissful in that eternal. So, 3 levels of sight. I mean, there's also 3 levels of hearing, where you could go to the teaching of Om, and 3 levels of feeling, where you could go to the love, to the bhakti path, how you feel deeply. But this one we're concentrating on 3 levels of sight, all coming out of where else? The true sight. If thine eye be single sight. And we'll look at that next. In fact, all we need to do then is show you what's beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. What's beyond all senses? What happens to a soul whose eye turns single for all times? There you see it on the right-hand side of this chart. First, avinashantam. And these are words used in the Bhagavad Gita. Avinashantam means sees reality as imperishable. Well, here's a whole different kind of seeing we're going through now. This is non-dual sight. It's not limited by gross, subtle, or even causal senses. If it's a third eye, then why shouldn't it have three things? See, it's mentioned about it, you see. So you see reality as imperishable. So this is a philosophical seeing, isn't it? It's an intellectual seeing. It goes beyond those two, but how else can you describe it in English? You're really seeing the nature of reality. So that's a kind of sight. So you must have an eye that can do that. And that would be defining as much as we can the Ajna Chakra. Has anyone ever defined it that way for you before? Have you ever heard it that way? Krishna's talking about it, and he wants you to go to it, but who's making the connection in the Gita when these senses aren't even mentioned there very much? He's just trying to get you beyond sense objects. Or dream. From dreams awake, from bonds be free. Know the truth. Thou art he, thou art she. They're trying to get you into this transcendent of the dream life, which is with your ancestors. This big dream that's going on in cycles. So I pause there. There's not a lot to say about it, but what is said is very profound. Reality is imperishable. It's a non-dual sight you have. It's an insight. Some people even have it as a foresight before they get here. Oh, I'm sending you down to the three worlds, Lord Brahma told his mind-born son Vishishta. Here, take this knowledge of imperishability with you. Akanda Satchidananda, make sure you keep this with you on earth. So Maya won't waylay you as it has done even wise people. Well, the other thing is said about it is sarvatra samavatistam. I don't have the word tista, or tistam means steady. So sees reality dwelling equally everywhere. And go back to the song, Jo Kuchahai, right? Tujya se hamne dil ko lagaya. Let's go back and see how Brahman's in everything, everywhere, and thou art that. So sarvatra, everything. Samavatistam. It's dwelling everywhere and in everything equally. How is that possible? In the same way that the sun is shining in dewdrops every morning equally. The dewdrops make it compartmentalized, but they all glint with the light of that sun. So that's how Brahman dwells in everything. It may be delimited or restricted, that is, by the amount that it can hold in its particular bulk or mass or volume or content. But nonetheless, there it is, shining in all things. So sometimes with the Atman, we give that teaching in Advaita Vedanta. It's equally in quantity and in quality, just so there's no doubt about this, that some people have more of it than others. See? If you have it all at once, everywhere and in everything. If you don't have it, that's the only distinction we'll make. You simply haven't awoken to any higher center yet, what to speak of the sixth center, where you will see it as clear as day. As clear as the new day, see? The soft spring wind of the new day raises fresh waves of joy. There in blissful majesty, the mother is enshrined. So you see it in that way, the way the great songs of India talk about it. I'd like to dwell on that, but we're running out of time in this class. Let's go to the third one so we accomplish two charts in this class. That is Prakriti Karma Kriyamanani. And this is a teaching, also one of our favorites out of the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna gives. Sees that nature performs all action while the soul remains actionless. Pafaft. Pafaft. Partless, formless, actionless, and divine. So nature performs all action. Because the mind is in nature, when the mind becomes distinguishes itself as no mind, or higher mind, or pure mind, then it's not in nature anymore. But consciousness is manning a station in nature. And so as long as it does that, it's limited by that vehicle that it's taking up, which is why you meditate above it, you see. That's why higher chakras are there. So that's a great teaching for people who are having a problem right now neutralizing their karma or seeing through the world of name and form in time and space and coming up short in their abilities or their realizations, you see. They need to sit back and say, I see all this is happening in nature. I just had that realization. Thank you, Sri Krishna, for teaching me that, you see. Because now I know, I mean, it may not be that clear right now. I'll think about it. But I do know one thing. No action happens in me. That you can be most certain of, see, when you examine yourself. No action ever takes place in your Atman. So you can default to the non-dual real quick and work on nature later. See. That's the way I look at it. It'd be kind of hard to say all action is taking place in nature. I mean, it's obvious. But who's the agent? See, that would get in and kind of muddle up the picture, you see. Who's the agent there? The will power. Well, you better give that away to Mother real quick. See, she can deal with that, you can't. You see. With your ancestors, with the karma of your ancestors and all that. This is why you have a refuge to go to. And she'll give you a higher sight. What does it remind you of in the Gita? Sri Krishna says, to those who love me, I give them the discrimination by which they come to me. He'll give you viveka when you love him, her, it, that, yourself. So this is 5 words for the same thing. Talk about another fivefold teaching. So I think we've reached the end here of our first class. I hope it's been informative at least to you, and maybe even inspiring to take this knowledge in and let it have roots in your mind so that it will stay and stand you in good stead. Next week we'll go on to look at the 7 chakras in 7 different systems and the granthis that are in the way of that, called knots. These nadis are there. They're also granthis, 2 very important words in Sanskrit, particularly useful in the Kundalini system. And we'll look at some nadis too, briefly, and just show you a kind of visual of how channels are there, how they get blocked, how they get opened with sadhana, and we can always refer back to then our knowledge we already have about 4 stages in which that happens. So here, let's then end with a chant. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrini Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya, Gatung Ye Nupataye, Daivi Svastrastu Naha, Svastir Manusebyaha, Urdvam Jagatu Besajam, Sangno Astu Dvipade Sangjatushpate, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Come, let us make a pure and humble offering of the small self into the great self. May we always delight in this offering and revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. Then may divine blessings come upon us. May peace come to the entire human race. And may healing, well-being, and prosperity also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Kula Kundalini Guma Banda Kahe, Redi Granti Vidarana Kara Kahe, Mama Manasha Chanchala Ratra Dine, Guru Deva Daya Karakina Jane. Jaya Sadguru Ishvara Prabha Kahe, Bhavaroga Vikara Vina Shaka He, Mana Jena Rahitava Shri Charane, Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane. Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane. Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane.